This video is about getting stuck, changing direction, adding new tools, changing workflows, getting inspiration from a stranger, changing direction again just to end up where I started, but in a better position. I feel like I still have to learn how to make good introductions, so let's just get started. Remember the version I showed you last time? That was kinda cool, right? I definitely thought so too, but there were some problems. Like, drawing still wasn't fast enough to get perfectly smooth scrolling, and speaking of scrolling, the infinite scrolling thing worked in theory, but in practice there were still glitches, and redrawing elements in front of the player had even more problems. The scrolling issues seemed to be a case of the math not mathing, so I decided to focus on the other problems first. However, the problem with those problems was that, for one, I had already optimized the drawing routines to the best of my ability, and two, I couldn't think of a smarter way to do it. I still tried though. I spent about 2 weeks racking my brain trying to optimize or to come up with something smart or creative, but I didn't make any significant progress. And at some point I started thinking, what am I doing here? I should have stuck with the platformer and by now I'd be working on gameplay or even finishing touches. Heck, maybe I would have finished the game by now, because all I wanted to build was a simple game my 10-year-old self would have been proud of, but no, I always have to one-up myself, and now I'm trying to build something that was probably challenging for an experienced developer back then. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And now I'm spending my days staring at assembly code, trying to squeeze out a few cycles, but I'm not making any progress. Like, what is my fucking problem? So I also had a challenging project at work around that time, and looking back, I feel like it might have impacted my mood, energy, and decision making. I'm not saying there wasn't a grain of truth in there, but I think what I really needed was some time off. Instead, I decided to give up on the isometric view and switch to plan B, top-down perspective. The good thing was that this got me going again. I didn't have to optimize drawing routines because the ones I needed here were fast enough, so I started fixing the map scrolling. After creating a big test map, I wrote code to scroll using different patterns until I figured out what the problem was. And the problem was, of course, me. A simple miscalculation. A simple fix? Check. Next up, building a map that actually looks like a game map. I didn't want to waste time creating artwork, so I downloaded a free tile set. But when I saw how many tiles were in that set, I knew it would be a pain in the ass to create something with my current level editor. My current level editor being a text editor. Of course, building my own level editor would have been the real deal, like what people were doing back in the 90s, but man, this project is already getting out of hand, so I ditched that idea. Instead, I spent some time researching existing editors and I ended up using Tiled, the flexible level editor. It supports various engine-specific formats as well as generic ones like XML, JSON, or CSV, but I didn't want to write an XML or JSON parser in Pascal, not even CSV. But what's really cool about Tiled is that you can write your own plugins. So I came up with a simple binary format and wrote a plugin. After a few simple changes to the loading routine, the new map appeared on the screen. So now I was able to create and edit maps in this nice editor, export them, and I only had to copy them from Mac to PC somehow. Either by using a floppy disk or the compact flash card, which is essentially the PC's hard disk. Which means I have to power it off first and then boot it up again. So of those two options, the floppy disk was the faster solution. But faster isn't exactly fast. So eventually I had enough and started developing on my Mac inside DOSBox. This made map editing and testing easier, and it also made me realize how much I had missed Git. I know to some people Git's more of a burden, a tool they have to use, but to me it's a fun thing that lets me work in a structured way and explore different ideas easily and quickly. In contrast to the version control strategy I used on the PC, which was almost non-existent. I just made backups every once in a while or before making a significant change, but I can't say it worked well. Most of the time I lost track which directory and file was for what. So quite naturally, working in a more structured way again felt really good, and I started cleaning up, moving code around, generalizing, making small commits. It felt like coming home. It also felt wrong, not because of Git, but because I was sitting at this modern machine. I wanted to get back to the CRT and the second CRT for step debugging, the good old IBM Model M, and the PC with its noisy PSU. At the same time, I didn't want to give up version control or the ability to quickly make changes to the map. So what do you do about that dilemma? Well, after another research session, I realized I can have my cake and eat it too. I only needed a few things: an ISA network card, a Cat5 cable that's long enough to connect the PC to the router, a handful of drivers and applications. Once everything's plugged in, it works like this. When I boot the PC, the project folder on my Mac automatically gets mounted as Drive D. I can work on the project, and when I'm done, I press a hotkey and boom, I'm inside the project folder on my Mac. I can make commits, switch branches, or whatever I have to do, and when I'm done, I type exit and I'm back in the IDE. How does it work? Thanks to Jaroslav Rohil's net mount, I can export folders on my Mac and mount them as virtual drives on the PC. And with the Telnet client from Michael Brutman's collection of TCP/IP applications, I can connect to the Mac and run Git commands in the shell. What about making changes to the map? Well, when I export a map to the shared folder, it becomes immediately available on the PC. Easy as that. But let's get back to the game. I kept working on it, and this whole thing turned out pretty well. Map scrolling works flawlessly in every direction. In theory, there are no limits of how big a map could be. It could scroll forever. However, in practice, I'm still in real mode, so memory blocks are limited to roughly 64K, which is still plenty. My current demo map is 320 by 200 tiles, or 5120 by 3200 pixels in size. And it's made up of 4 layers. And this whole thing renders at about 60 frames per second. So this is kinda cool. Compared to everything I've built so far in this series, it's the most advanced, most performant, and most stable version. But of course, I was only able to build it because I had built the previous versions. So exploring modex and doing all those assembly optimizations paid off. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little sad about not seeing the isometric thing through. In March, I had a video call with Novus Idea. We met on Blue Sky a while ago because of our shared interest, DOS game programming. He's working on a 3D engine called CyberVGA. If you like what I'm doing, you'll probably like his project as well. So if you want to check it out, you can find links in the description. The reason for this call was the DM I sent him back in December when I was doing my first experiments with modex. I knew he was using modex as well, and I sent him a few questions, so he suggested a video call to talk it through. But because of the holidays, sickness, busy lives, it took us months to actually make it happen. And by that time, I'd read up on many things, had implemented various approaches, so basically all of my initial questions were already answered. So instead, we spent the time chit-chatting and looking at each other's code, and when I brought up things I still wanted to optimize, he started talking about how he deals with those things in his 3D world. And I immediately knew I definitely had to give it a try. The thing is, I really liked how the code was evolving, but I wasn't sure if this new approach was gonna work. But I also knew there were many similarities between the top-down and the isometric views, so I figured the best approach was to separate the rendering specifics. That way I could use the same core functionality for both views and develop them in parallel. So I was basically playing it safe. And because I wanted to change as little code as possible, and because the existing code was based on a rectangular grid, I had to find a way to render isometric tiles this way. So instead of drawing full tiles, I'm drawing all partial tiles that meet in a certain grid cell. But let's get to the interesting part. I'm gonna show it to you first. So check this out. The player's visible, partially visible, fully visible, fully hidden, no redrawing issues, 60 frames per second. How does it work? So the thing Novus idea told me about were Z buffers. A Z buffer stores depth information. Let me show you what it looks like. Here's the Z buffer for the clip I showed you. The brighter a pixel is, the closer it is to the camera. So when I want to draw something, I can check the Z buffer to see if there's something at that location that's closer to the camera than what I'm about to draw. If that's the case, I don't have to draw it at all because it wouldn't be visible anyway. So instead of using the painter's algorithm and drawing layers from the bottom up, I now do the opposite, and because of the Z buffer, some tiles will be drawn only partially and some not at all. So that's definitely smarter. What's even cooler is that I don't have to redraw layers in front of the player anymore. The Z buffer is in control of what's visible of the player at a certain location. That's why it's so freaking fast. But there must be a catch, right? Of course there is. Checking against the Z buffer takes time, and that means the drawing routines that weren't fast to begin with are now even slower. Not a big deal if there isn't much to draw, like in this clip. However, once you start moving around, the problem becomes obvious. And it's not just the drawing that's slow. Moving the map also means reorganizing the Z buffer. How bad is it? Well, the frame rate drops from 60 to 24 frames per second when moving the map by one column or row. It only happens for 2 frames because I'm using 2 pages, but it's enough to kill the smooth scrolling. So yeah, it's not great. At the same time, it's also funny because I remember that 24 frames per second was peak performance in the beginning of the series. I guess I've come a long way. But I also think there's still a long way to go, so I'm glad my energy levels are back to normal and I already have a few ideas how to make it more performant. Will I be able to hit 60 frames per second consistently? I don't think so, but maybe I'll be able to get it fast enough to cap it at 30. That's probably a more realistic expectation given there's still a lot missing that's needed for a real game. So I'll keep the top-down version on the back burner and spend more time optimizing this isometric thing and keep ignoring the elephant in the room, like what's this game really about? Well, I guess I'll come up with something at some point. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.